When you watch a white billiard ball roll across a table and strike a red ball, you already know exactly what will happen next, and the red ball will roll forward. We take this for granted. We assume that predicting the red ball's path is a simple act of logic, a calculation performed by a rational human mind. The objective was to map the strict boundaries of empiricism, the philosophy that all substantive knowledge must originate exclusively from our sensory impressions. This diagram represents the core of Book 1 of the treatise, where Hume introduces a thesis that dismantles our understanding of reality. Human reason is completely blind to cause and effect. To understand how he arrives at this, we have to step through his formal proof. It is a rigorous, inescapable deduction, demonstrating that our ability to predict physical outcomes has no basis in logic. If Hume's deduction holds up, we are forced to entirely redefine what it means to know anything about the physical world. The foundation of all scientific inquiry and daily survival is built on a cognitive illusion rather than any kind of logical certainty. This diagram illustrates the academic structure of Hume's argument concerning induction, found in section 1.3.6 of the treatise. We will navigate through these 4 shaded regions to test our assumptions about cause and effect. We start by testing a priori reasoning. This refers to pure logic, deduced completely independent of physical experience. Think of mathematics or geometry. Here we encounter premises A and B. They state that any physical effect is entirely distinct from its cause. In the imagination, they are separable. You can perfectly visualize a billiard ball turning into a bouquet of flowers upon impact, and doing so does not violate any rule of pure logic. Because these alternative effects are completely conceivable to the mind, we arrive at premise C. Causal relations cannot be discovered by a priori logic alone. Pure mathematics and abstract deduction are strictly conceptual. You cannot use them to discover physical laws if you haven't observed the physical objects. To predict how objects will interact in the real world, human reason is utterly dependent on the raw data of past experience. Since pure logic fails us, we must examine how the mind actually processes physical data to make predictions. This brings us to premise D. What we label as experience is really just the memory of observed constant conjunctions. Event A happens, and we remember that it has always been followed by event B. But observing that 2 events have always been joined together in the past does not automatically give us logical permission to assume they will be joined together in the future. To project our past experience forward, we must employ premise E. This requires relying on a hidden, foundational assumption. This is the uniformity principle. It is the strict assumption that the future course of nature will reliably resemble the past. Every scientific hypothesis, every engineering calculation, and every mundane daily action inherently requires this single principle to function. If the uniformity principle itself cannot be proven by rational deduction, the entire architecture of empirical science rests on a leap of faith. We test the uniformity principle using premise F, commonly known as Hume's fork. This rule states all valid reasoning falls into 2 categories. It is either demonstrative, meaning pure mathematical logic, or it is probable, meaning it relies on factual, empirical evidence. We will first test the uniformity principle against demonstrative reasoning to see if it holds up to pure logical scrutiny. We immediately hit premise G. We can distinctly conceive of a change in the course of nature. It is easy to imagine gravity suddenly reversing and objects falling upward. The mere fact that a changing universe is conceivable to the human mind destroys any absolute mathematical certainty of a static one. This leaves us at premise H. Because it is possible for nature to change, there can be no demonstrative argument for the uniformity principle. Logic and mathematics are officially powerless to guarantee that the sun will rise tomorrow morning. Our only remaining hope to justify human knowledge is the second prong of Hume's fork, probable reasoning. We shift our focus down the probable reasoning pathway to test the uniformity principle one last time. Here we establish premises I and J. Probable arguments start from the evidence of our memory, but they must go beyond it. The only relation allowing us to make that leap from what we remember to what we predict is cause and effect. This leads directly into premise K. All probable arguments regarding cause and effect are inherently founded on the supposition that nature is uniform. Look closely at the logical sequence. A catastrophic structural flaw has just occurred. This is premise L. You cannot use a probable argument to prove the uniformity principle, because all probable arguments require the uniformity principle to function in the first place. This is vicious circularity, invalidating the entire proof. It is the logical equivalent of a dictionary defining a word but using the word itself. We arrive at premise M. Because demonstrative logic and probable reasoning have both failed, there is no valid argument of any kind for the uniformity principle. The deduction is complete. Conclusion N. Causal inferences are absolutely not founded on reason. Human reason has just bankrupted itself. The intellect is not the master of reality. In our attempts to understand the physical universe, we are navigating entirely blindfolded. We are left with a vital question. If logic isn't telling us that the billiard balls will collide, what is? Hume provides an answer in conclusion O. Causal inferences are founded entirely on the associative principles of the imagination. Our predictions are biological reflexes. When we observe constant conjunctions, neural pathways begin firing together, becoming deeply ingrained through repetition. Hume termed this custom and habit. It is a practical coping mechanism developed strictly through exposure, completely divorced from logical deduction. The human mind is conditioned much like an animal. We rely on the associative gravity of past events to survive, rather than pure intellect. Our most rigorous scientific predictions and our everyday knowledge of the world are not absolute truths. They are highly refined, biologically ingrained habits. The destructive power of this proof forced Hume to reconsider how he presented his philosophy. The treatise faced criticism for being overly complex and difficult to grasp. When he later published an inquiry concerning human understanding, he stripped away the dense psychological metaphysics. He focused the text almost entirely on this specific logical trap. By streamlining his work to highlight the inescapable failure of reason, Hume secured his legacy as history's preeminent empiricist skeptic.